All right, so welcome. Here we go. Michelle, you haven't taken this yet, right? I was trying to remember.
No,
You didn't take this in September, did you?
no,
No.
I
Okay,
didn't. I'm a
cool.
newbie.
Cool.
I'll keep it short.
Okay, cool. Cool. All right. I was just making sure. All right. So today is kind of our most non-numbers focused session of the four. I really like to start off with just like a brief introduction of who I am, get to learn a little bit more about you two. I know both of you obviously very well at this point, but you don't know each other. And so I'll give you guys a chance to just kind of connect and know a little bit more about each other's businesses. We'll talk a little bit about an overview for the month. And then the main focus of today is money stories. And so, like, how did you learn what you learned about money? And what are those kind of scripts and narratives that are playing in your head on a daily basis, but also like throughout your business? And what kind of relationship do we want to have with money in our business? And what would an ideal scenario be for you in terms of how you relate to money? And then we'll look at some next steps and you'll have a little bit of homework leaving each of these sessions. So hopefully, Kate, I'll start with Michelle and just give Michelle, if you want to just kind of introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your business, just so Kate has some context. You guys actually have some really cool overlap, so I'm excited that you're both here.
Oh, hi, Kate. My name is Michelle Chalice, and I am. Why can't I see you? I want to be able to see you.
Oh, no,
Um,
yeah, it's the web setup, I think.
there we go. Okay. So I am an environmental landscape educator, coach, and designer in Keene, New Hampshire, with a little company called Healthy Home Habitats. Um, and this is, I think I'm coming into my fifth year,
Nice.
2024. I started this in 2019. I've been was a registered landscape architect. I got a bachelor's degree in 1985, but everything has changed. And I tried all different kinds of ways to find out where I could best offer what I have to offer to the world. And after 18 years of different types of public service,
Mhm.
yeah, I just doesn't do it. So now I am much happier working with individual homeowners, inspiring, inciting, and engaging them in understanding the choices that they have at home to make healthier communities. Um, so we're just doing ourselves. We're not doing the money story yet, right?
Yep,
So I
just
have a,
yourself right now.
yeah, I have a
Yep.
teenage daughter. We live in a duplex here in downtown Keene where I have my demonstration gardens.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. Kate, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Kate, and I've been working as a beekeeper for an apiary. I came to Vermont to get a master's in natural resources, and I sort of like got involved with a wonderful beekeeper here, and I've been working with him for the past 12 years. And um, in that time, I also bought sort of like an old dilapidated farmhouse. So I'm in the process of renovating that as well, um, as trying to start a little business, which I registered last December.
Nice.
Um, and so I have a little apiary and sell honey and hopefully queens and bees. So I'm really interested in your environmental landscape design. I think about flowers and plants all the time. I'm like very connected to them through my work, of course,
Yeah.
since how the bees roll.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate.
Oops.
And then I'd love to know just so I can help kind of tailor this content as we move through it. What are you both hoping to learn? Like, why did you sign up for this series specifically?
Michelle, do you want to go first or do you want me to
Go
go?
ahead. I talk way too much and I always interrupt, so I'm trying to get better. So please go first.
Okay. Um, I signed up because, yeah, the money, even I can see in this year, I need to like set up systems around
Mhm.
money in and money out. And that's not, that's like not something that I'm very good at. It's sort of nested within the systems that I need to set up to make the business work anyway, since agriculture is so like you just need a lot of efficiency to
Mm-hmm.
make it work. So yeah, I'm kind of like a money dummy, and um I've thought about sort of the role of money in my life a lot, but not like how I could make it work in business. So I'm trying to figure out A, if I can what kind of income I can generate from this business over the next 3 years, and how I can support that with something else. So I'm really here just to learn about
Nice.
the like systems,
Yep.
cogs, balance sheets, all of that stuff that
Cool.
will help me get the data I need.
Cool. We have, after today, we'll focus on I've got a really basic spreadsheet with functions in it that'll help you just keep track of like money coming in, money going out, and what can we expect moving down the line. And so hopefully we can obviously pay, and we can talk about this, but we can obviously pay for much more high-tech systems. Like we can get QuickBooks, we can get all sorts of different things. But there's also really rad free spreadsheets that'll do all of these calculations for you. And so what I've done is, find one that I think works the best for what it is. And so then I'll be handing that out next week, and we'll be filling it in over our next 3 weeks together. So we'll be filling that in so that by the end of the month, you'll be able to see exactly how much money came in. Ideally, I'm going to ask you to do the whole last year so that we've got some good data to look at and make projections for 2024. And hopefully that will give you some just a little bit more confidence and like, oh, okay, like I actually have some tangible data that I can reference, that I can think about. And then, yeah, hopefully like a little less anxiety around the whole topic in general. And also like some basic, I think, like language too around finances. I noticed for me, when I first started learning about finance, I was like, I don't understand these words and they all sound like mumbo jumbo. And then I just feel stupid and my brain like just shuts down and I have a really hard time engaging with the content. And so we'll spend some time with that too, just getting comfortable with what all these terms are.
Can I tell you why I signed up? Yeah.
Yeah. Michelle,
Okay,
I was going to say, Michelle, you're next. Why'd you
Yeah, I
sign up?
know.
What do you want to learn?
So I signed up because I'm looking for that sweet spot. I actually am on QuickBooks. I
Cool.
use it occasionally to try to figure out how to track my miles, and I snap receipts, which is going to be a really good thing because mostly I use it like a mad person starting now until March for my accountant. My accountant's going to be very happy with you. And the pile on my desk now has additional incentive to get put into QuickBooks.
Yeah.
It would be great to not have to pay QuickBooks. But so I'll be listening for that as well. And I'm curious to see what systems you have in place and see if they might work for my avoidance tendencies.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Yeah, I think it really depends on it just depends on how complicated your business is. The more complicated your expenses and your income streams get, the more likely you're going to need something like QuickBooks, and like a spreadsheet is just going to be a frustration because it's not going to have all the functions you want. Like for instance, the spreadsheet is not going to track mileage. It's not going to like you're going to need to manually upload all of your expenses. So it tends to work. I think it's a really good beginning place for us to just enter the conversation without having to spend money. And then for those of us that have a little bit, like even just a couple months into my carpentry business, I'm like, oh, this is getting complicated really quickly. And I'm having to do a lot of like spreadsheets and like it's getting not fun quickly. And whereas like my coaching business, like I don't even need any accounting. I can just like use my Stripe account essentially, right? Like it's just not that hard. So it really just depends on what we're trying to track and how, where we're expecting the business to go. And we'll talk about that today too, of just like, what are our goals? What do we really want to be seeing happen? So awesome. Thank you both for sharing, and we'll make sure to get into that. So I like to just mention, a big thank you to Opportunities Credit Union for hosting these workshops. The Business Sense program is new, as I mentioned a little bit earlier before I hit record. This is a 4-year grant program that's designed to bring business coaching and business and financial information to our community, specifically in Vermont, and specifically to folks who have been kind of left out of the banking industry in general. So we also do a lot of support for small businesses around loans. And so we have programs for business owners that have either no credit or quote bad credit. You can still get a loan for your business through Opportunities. So if that's something you're ever thinking about, you're like, oh, I think maybe, or at least I'd be curious if I'm a good candidate for a loan. Yeah. Always feel free to let me know. Happy to hand you off to the right person over there. And then both of you know me at this point, but I'll just say, I'm really excited to be entering into, this is the 3rd time that I've taught this series. And however, it's the first time I've taught this series as a business owner of 2 businesses that operate very, very differently. And so I'm excited to re-engage with this material with you guys and looking at it through a really different lens. My carpentry business just operates so differently than my coaching business in terms of like financials and billing and thinking about like marking up materials, or do I just increase my hourly rate, or do I go project based, or right? Like there's a lot of different variances that are coming into play there for me. And so I'm excited to navigate this space with you guys and do some work on my own as too. So thanks for having me, and thanks for being here. Both of you are familiar with my take on anti-capitalism. I always bring this. I think this is relevant no matter what topic we're talking about. But being an anti-capitalist, it's not about not earning money or not being comfortable or not being well. I think sometimes we can get into this kind of like martyr mind framework of like, I'm gonna save the planet, and I'm going to save all of my community, and I'm gonna like give and give and give and give until I collapse kind of vibe. And that is often partnered with, I'm not going to charge any money, or I'm going to charge very, very little money for my services because I care and love so deeply. And although like I think that really stems from the right place, it's not feasible, right? And if you've ever spent time in your business trying to do things as cheaply as possible, it's not a lot of fun, and it burns you out real, real quick. And so, part of what I invite you to be considering this month is, how do we still serve the communities that matter to us? And how do we still meet our individual and collective needs, while also honoring and acknowledging that like we do live in a capitalist system, and you do need to pay a mortgage or rent, and you do need to put food on the table, and food is wildly expensive right now. And so like, kind of holding both of these truths instead of saying, I'm going to sacrifice myself and my well-being and my health in order to like accomplish these goals, right?
Emily, would it be all right
yeah.
if we, because of the 2 of us, have an
Yeah.
opportunity to give our 2 cents on where
Oh,
we are in those
absolutely.
thoughts?
I
Is that all
love
right with
not
you?
talking the whole time.
Is that all right with you, Kate?
Absolutely. I would love
Okay.
that.
Because I definitely have traveled in all those places. Most landscape architects work with the top 10% of our economic
Yeah.
system on their second homes and all
Yeah.
kinds of non-native, the landscaping industry is horrendous for the environment. So I'm not there, but I have completely exhausted my savings and most of my retirement at this point, feeling determined to work with regular working class people,
Yeah.
the survival paradigm is, you got to eat, you have to have a place to sleep first. And people think of the environment as the topmost. After you're enlightened, you can think about flowers and plants. And number one, I have to survive. I'm getting food from the community kitchen. I try not to make that very public to make sure that my daughter and I continue to eat. We have a roof over our head, but that is my challenge, is how do I meet what I feel are the community's needs and still
Mhm.
provide for my family? So that is exactly, it's the reason why I'm taking this class from you, because you're coming from where you're coming from. So I appreciate that. And I'm
Thanks.
still looking for that personal balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Same. I am too sometimes. It's like there are certain things that I'm still doing work-wise that if I didn't have to make a living, I wouldn't be doing because I don't enjoy them and they're not fun. But I have to do them in order to like pay our bills, right? And like I'm not in a partnership where my partner can pay all of our bills. And so we both need to earn a living. And I think I think one of the places I get most frustrated is seeing folks that wear my hat say things like, it's limiting beliefs, or like you need to just like manifest your way into money. And like that kind of shit really drives me nuts because I'm like, that's not true. Like, it's not that I don't believe in my ability to earn a living. It's that I don't believe in exploiting people to get there. Like that's the hook, right? And so, I think I think there's so much value in just being honest, like you are, Michelle, about like what your reality is. And you also still have so much to offer, right? It's like both things. So I just really appreciate you sharing with us. Yeah. Cool. All right. Okay, so and I think if you've been in a workshop with me, you've seen these questions, but I definitely want to bring these into the first step I'm going to ask you about is like what are our goals for this month? Like what is it you really want to walk away with, and getting very specific. And so I like to think about that question of like, what is my goal through this lens of like, where am I of best service? What do I physically or intellectually or ancestrally have access to in terms of resources? What do I need, right? Like, what are some of the needs I still have? And these can be needs for me personally, or needs for the business, or needs for my community or my family. And then what am I really set up to do this year, right? Like, what is, looking systems wise, um, you know, but also emotionally, like what is the business set up to do in 2024? Because sometimes it can be really easy for me to be like, oh, I really want to do this. And then I'm like, you have none of the foundation to make that a reality. That's going to suck. And so, just being a little bit honest too, a little bit of a reality check, balancing that like optimism with reality, and figuring out like what we're really set up to do this year. So I'm gonna, I'll bring us here. I'd love to hear, yeah, like what feels like it's working right now. And ideally, we're thinking a little bit through this lens of finance. But if it goes outside of that, that's totally cool. So what's working right now? What's not? What feels really important for you to walk away with after this month or after today? Yeah, let's make a little space for that. And if you want me to go back to this other slide, if that's helpful, I'm happy to do that.
Want to go, Kate?
No, you go ahead.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna have to count on you, Emily, to say, okay, that's good, Michelle. Just, close me.
That's
down.
enough, Michelle.
Right, okay.
Enough desires for the month.
Right, but wait, we're on the questions. No, what's working right now? Okay, what's working right now? I think I mentioned yesterday, Kate, there was a session yesterday too with Emily, and what I've come to understand is I make my money from landscape designs. But then people just sit on them and they don't want to spend thousands of dollars, and I completely get it. And I don't want them to spend thousands of dollars. I want people's hands in the ground. So this year, the goal is to do more workshops and programs, which actually make me very happy and make people happy. I love to see their smiles and interacting. So this year I'm going on a wing and a prayer. I still have a part-time gig, but I'm going to focus on looking for more collaborations with other small businesses in the area to focus on the workshops and programs, because I do have these demonstration gardens here. That is something that my business has now. I completely ripped several of them up, got rid of, now I'm at 80% native, much more diverse. And so I'll be having monthly workshops here. I can use this space. I have a small 4-car parking lot. I can put up tents. And I'm going to use what I have because I have this space, because I have the gardens, try to focus on the workshops that make me happier. What was the other, what do I want help with? What do I want to walk away with today is seeing if I can find a more streamlined way to keep track of what each of these things costs so that I can do a better job projecting next year. Okay, you love that, but you're going under for those entities because it costs you this and you're only taking in that. So if I can find a system that can help me keep track better of what I spend for each of these entities, then that will help me do a better job next year projecting that most businesses are supposed to do.
Yeah, cool. I appreciate that. One thing that came to mind when I was listening to you talk, because something that's worked really well for me in my business, so like for a long time, for like 2 years, I was running my main coaching program that I like how I make the majority of my money. And every single month I was being met with resistance of like clients were like, I can't afford this. And I was like, I get it. I can't afford this. Like I couldn't afford me. Right. And so like, and that's stupid. Like that just feels weird. And so I was like, all right, how do I get other people to pay for this? Like, how do I find someone to pay for folks to be with me to receive my information? And that sent me for like a whole year. I was looking for folks to pay. And I had tried doing, like I had asked Ben and Jerry's to sponsor someone, and they sponsored one human for 1 year. And then that was it. And I was like, well, that wasn't very effective. And so I was like brainstorming different things. And I was just, one idea that just came to me. I don't know what it's like in New Hampshire, but in Vermont, we have these like energy efficiency rebates for like to get like an e-bike or to get an electric vehicle or to get a heat pump installed. Like, and these are all things to combat climate change. And I wonder if there's something like some angle you could take with the city or the state of like these gardens actively combat climate change. Can people get some sort of rebate to like to either buy the plants or buy the seeds or buy, I don't know, like, is there some way that we could get some sponsorship of it? Or maybe it's private businesses that we get to sponsor, the plans. Or I was thinking about this for my online course. I was going to ask Mascoma Bank here. I think Mascoma Bank's like in all of New England. I don't think they're just Vermont specific. I'm not sure. But Mascoma Bank is very, first of all, they're a private bank. They're not a nonprofit. Opportunities is a nonprofit. So they have no offense, Opportunities, but you have no money. But a private bank has lots of money, right? And Mascoma is like very socially, environmentally driven. And so they sponsor things like they'll sponsor different, you can go and ask them to sponsor an event, or I was thinking of asking them to sponsor my course. And so it's like there would be an advertisement on my course for Mascoma Bank, because people who coach with me eventually are going to need to use a bank of some sort, and maybe it's Mascoma, but like something like that where I don't know if it's like the seed store that you buy the seeds from is a sponsor, or like if we could get creative with how to decrease the cost to the client to work with you, if that makes sense.
Oh,
So-
absolutely, Emily, I
Yeah.
believe you're on the right track. I've got to find grants and
Yeah.
sponsorships, and the goal, so people move to New Hampshire so that they don't have to pay taxes.
Yeah, I know.
And taxes support community benefit.
I know. My
So,
in-laws live there, and it's their
yeah,
biggest
and-
gripe about moving to Vermont. They're like, I don't want to pay taxes. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
well, guess
do you
what?
realize what taxes do?
Right, where I come from, Madison, Wisconsin, I was happy to pay my taxes because it gave us street trees and it gave us lovely community
Totally.
benefits. So
Totally.
that's a huge
Hurdle.
roadblock there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I've been doing is slowly talking to the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. They've got
Mhm.
$10,000. They want, they want to do, it wasn't 10, it was $100,000 grants for stormwater management. Well, I've got
Yeah.
a system here for harvesting stormwater with rain barrels for use in the
Nice.
gardens. And
Yeah.
so I'll go back to them now and talk about, can we do a smaller version of that?
Yeah.
Because I'm not a civil engineer. So
Yeah.
finding those matchups of what I have to offer with the funds that are out there, President Biden signed how many bazillions of dollars for climate change,
Yeah.
and slowly that's got to tinker down to the lower levels. Finding those connections are challenging, but I've just got to keep trying, and will be
Yeah.
continue to look for grant funding. It all just takes time, right?
Totally.
So
Totally. Yeah.
absolutely, that is the tact, that is the goal.
Cool. I love that. Sorry, I feel like I went off on a little bit of a tangent, but that's what we get to do when it's just three of us. Kate, your turn.
Yeah, I was curious about stormwater mitigation, especially because you live in a city. If that could be an avenue for something. So for me, what's working, I think that there's a lot of like magic embedded, not necessarily like in my business, but in this whole like business of bees. And so I get a lot of joy from the work and being to nature in that way, which is really special. And other people get joy from it too, right? People will be like
Yeah.
doing God's work, which I don't think is necessarily true, but it is sort of like a unique position in our world where so many people were in front of screens. Like, for example, during
Yeah.
COVID, like when the shutdowns happened, I remember because I was like subbing in the schools, and we always start mid-March at the apiary, and like the shutdowns happened. I was telling all the kindergartners to wash their hands, and like as soon as the lockdowns happened, that was the first nice warm day of the year. So we started our season, you know what I mean? So I think I've really, I just really appreciate that, along with like right now I've been noted, like I think it gives a certain amount of freedom. I've been noticing that a lot of my friends who own small businesses in this certain like political moment are much more free to share their so that's another thing I appreciate, is that my values can really come out through this business around health and the environment and connection and sort of like sharing the joy and magic of nature, as well as the relationships that I've started to build around this business project. What's not working is sort of like the systems and the time and the labor and valuing that. And I think I am in this unique position where the labor is like, what is a joyful hobby for many people. And it's really hard. I'm also, another thing that's like not necessarily working is that I'm so dependent on my body. And I've had some struggles with that after having COVID, which will hopefully resolve. And as far as help, it's sort of like with those sort of like financial tracking data systems. One of the things that I've really been thinking about and sort of like struggling with over the past year, which this might be a good place to like hone in on this a little more is like I have like I'm trying to figure out a pricing as a sort of like sliding scale pricing
Mhm.
scheme and how that
Sure.
would work.
Yep.
Some people are willing to pay a lot, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then some can't pay a lot. But I have this like really high quality, healthful product that I
Mhm.
want to share with.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess today I'd like to walk away or just like walk away with an understanding of what I need kind of
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
as far as those systems. And after this month, maybe like have some of those tools on my belt, more relationships to like rely on and expand,
Mhm.
and sort of more of an understanding of how flexible money is in our society because people have
Mm.
different access to it, you know?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I'm like, for example, myself, I'm in a position where I like own my house outright, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
huge and gives me like such, just gives me a lot of freedom, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
So, yeah, that's something that I've been thinking about and really like how to capitalize on the people that do have money because the people that do have money like have so much money.
They have so much
You know what
money.
I mean? They have so much.
So much money.
So like that's why I'm like sliding scale is one way to sort of like
Yep.
think about that.
Yep.
Um, and like for example, with your business, Michelle, like, I wonder if you can't capitalize on, like, have a part of your business that is like capitalizing on the wealthy people in your
Mhm.
community and taking
Mhm.
on some of those clients at a certain rate that allow you to work.
Sliding
And
Yeah.
scale is a great idea, and I've got to look more into Eventbrite and understand how to do that with them. I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure they charge, and Emily, I think you know this.
yeah,
I'm sure they charge for their service. They probably take
Yep.
a cut.
Yep.
Um,
They don't if
so
it's free. If the event, like these events that are free, I don't have to pay anything to use them. But as soon as you're charging, yeah, they're going to charge a processing fee. But I think they have a sliding scale feature. I'm pretty sure they do.
yeah, so that's how
Yeah.
I'd like to do these beginners eco gardening monthly classes
Yeah.
to allow for that and what you pay when you show up that day versus what you can pay if you sign up for the whole thing.
Yeah.
So
I also have had friends have a lot of success with like I have a friend who has a she does like parenting coaching type stuff. And
mhm.
so you can pay for another parent to have access. And
mm-hmm.
so like it's like it's everything's the same price, but you can also pay towards someone else getting the support. So you can think about that too. If it like I would
Is
play
there a
with
term for
it.
that? What is
I
that
I would
called? Is it
and I would
sponsor?
say,
what were you gonna say, Kate?
oh, just that that really works. You know,
Yeah.
like in my markets, I'll put out a jar, a simple jar that's like pay more so others can pay less. And always people are putting stuff in that jar and like it
Yeah.
really works. And then someone else will come up and be like, I only have $4. And I'll like take $4 out of the little jar.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like,
I think that framing might work better
okay.
than forcing folks to choose on a sliding scale because it then gives this feeling of like I'm giving versus I'm being taxed for having a certain amount of income. Like I
So how
think
would
it's
that work
it
for signing up
it
for a workshop though?
so like
And
it would be like workshops are $25 across the board for
Mhm.
everyone. I'm just throwing out a number.
Mhm.
And then when they're checking out, there would be an option to like put $5 towards someone
Okay.
else's workshop, put $10 towards someone's workshop, put the full 25 towards someone's workshop. We'd have to see like I'm sure there are certain systems that allow us to do this. We'd have to figure out what it is. I think ConvertKit allows you to do that.
I just
Um,
signed up for ConvertKit, so I'll take a look at that.
Cool. Yeah, so you might be able to do it there. Um, that's what I would probably do for paid events is I would probably do them through ConvertKit. But yeah, that could be an option too. I think like there's there's a different feeling between being like, oh man, I fall in the expensive bucket versus it's the same price for everybody. And I'm giving you an option to like gift, right?
I
Out of
agree.
like
Just the energy
generosity.
with which you communicate
It just
those.
like feels a little bit different. So
Yeah.
that could be an option too.
Okay.
Okay. I'm like, I have no sense of time right now. I'm like, what time is it? Oh, okay, we're good. So I have spent a lot of time with what's called the Clifton Strengths. Are either of you familiar with the Clifton Strengths assessment?
Yeah.
Sort of a little bit, yeah. At some point in time, it might be helpful to invest in this assessment. I am sad to say they have made it more expensive than I think is necessary. It used to be $45 and now I think it's like 69 or something, which is a little annoying to me, but I do think it's a really, really useful tool. So if you start to get where I think this is useful is if you are noticing that you're meeting a lot of resistance in what you've said you want to be doing. If you're like, I chose this as my path, my goal, yada, yada, I want these outcomes. And I'm noticing that I'm experiencing a lot of resistance getting there. And not necessarily like external resistance, like I can't find the funds or like I don't understand the tech or things like that, but more like internal resistance. Like you're like, I said I wanted to do this thing and yet I'm not doing it. Why is that? This could be a really helpful tool for figuring that out. I have noticed, I'll give an example of this. So my top strengths there are 4 different domains in the Clifton Strengths. So there's relationship building. Each of us leads with one of these categories. So there's relationship building, there's executing, there's influencing, and there's strategic thinking. And so each of us falls predominantly in one of those 4 buckets. So relationship building, executing, influencing, and strategic thinking. And we all do things in all 4, right? Like we all execute on tasks, we all build relationships, we all influence other people's ideas and behaviors, and we all think strategically about things at certain times. But there's one category that's easiest for you to access and is most enjoyable for you to access and feels energizing when you spend time in that space. And you might even just intuitively be like, ooh, I know which one that is for me, which is great. For me, it's influencing. It's this kind of stuff like showing up, teaching, influencing you to take action, to think in a different way. Like that's the easiest, most enjoyable thing for me to do. The hardest thing for me to do is execution. Getting me to adhere to administrative tasks is like wrestling a bag of cats. Like it's so painful for me. And I've noticed in my carpentry business, and Kate is experiencing this right now from me, is that I have so much fun with the site visit and meeting the person because that's all influencing. And I'm like, yay, this part's fun. I love meeting them. I love dreaming about the possibilities. It also like taps into strategic thinking because I'm like, ooh, we could do this or this, right? I'm problem solving. But then I have to send an estimate. And the estimate is 1,000% executing. I have to sit my ass down. I have to think through all the logistics. I have to type it out in a spreadsheet. I have to do calculations. This is all the hardest things for me to do. But then on the other side of that is like, I get to build the thing, right? And I get to use the strategic thinking again, and I get to see the person. And so there's the influencing again, and that part's fun. And so, it's important that we think about where we meet resistance in our business and how can we build out plans to support us through that, right? And so one thing I've come up with this week is I've asked my brother-in-law to sit down with me once a week. I'm going to pay him and we're going to do the invoices together or the estimates together. Like he's going to sit with me. He's going to do the typing. I'm just going to narrate what needs to get done and the invoice will be done or the estimate. I don't know why I keep saying invoice. Estimate will be completed, right? He's even going to email said estimates out, which will be lovely for me. And so it's just like thinking through, okay, I'm noticing there's resistance. Why is there resistance? And what's a system I could put into place to either bypass that resistance or quell that resistance, right? So thinking about that, are there parts like when you think about what you've said so far today of like what your goals are, how, you would like things to shift in terms of finances. Are there any obstacles that you can kind of anticipate may come up or you've seen come up in the past?
Well, for me, it's also executing, I think,
Yeah, it's hard.
and having those systems, which is why I think the tracking is going to be so helpful for me, because it'll give me more of a sense of what I'm doing is can be profitable.
Yep.
And it's sort of like the solo. And some of the solo stuff is like, I just can't do it by myself. Like I can't lift a 2-pound beehive by myself or something
Totally.
like that. So I'm gonna like keep hitting those obstacles. And
Yeah.
like it's right now I'm thinking of trying to keep the business very small, as well as like incorporate some other values into it around education, and in particular with kids.
Nice.
That can also be an income stream. But I think that piece of not having a partner is like, that's going to be a major roadblock for me. So,
Mm,
example, I have a friend down the street who runs a farm. And so like he has a lot of infrastructure set up, including labor infrastructure. And so what I'm
mm,
do is like coordinate more with his business, as well as introduce some stuff into his business, like seeds, which go with bees really well, as you guys know, and research.
nice.
So kind of like flexible thinking about income stream, labor, and also land base a little bit. Beekeeping is interesting because you don't have to have your own land base, you like put your bees on other people's land. I don't
Cool.
know if it addresses sort of your.
No. I love how you're like already creatively thinking through, like, how do I get past some of these obstacles that I have? Yeah. That's
Hey,
great.
can I say I'm so grateful that you don't have to worry about the types of pesticide issues that other people do when they're
Oh,
trying
we
to work.
do. Oh,
Do
we
you?
do.
Because
Oh,
drift
100%.
is a really, really, really frustrating issue when it comes to bees, native and non-native. Because then the land, your land, their land, everybody else's adherence to laws, blah, blah, blah. So I don't envy you on that
100%.
one.
That is a major, major, huge issue for us, because there are
Okay.
all sorts of feedback loops with pesticide, and like these landscape level feedback loops that are pesticides. I mean, there's some like weather issues, clean water, like all of this. And the pesticides, like on a low, like sublethal level, really affect the bees a lot, especially in combination with some of the.
Those
So
synergistic effects are really,
the
really.
clean environment is like extremely, my personal opinion is that it's extremely important for the bees. And like the apiary that I work for, all of our bees are on dairy farms full of pesticides.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's synergistic with the pests, with sort of like the existing pests that the bees are already dealing with.
Yeah. So I had to, I think I've done a decent job figuring out what my initial huge blocks were. I applied for a grant here right when I started the business, and I had to come up with a spiel, a 5-minute presentation. And you mentioned yesterday, Emily, about the new client you had who is an environmentalist and told you the whole bad news that really bowls you over. And I did that and then said, I'm going to help people not do that. But that's a huge block for me. The reality of where we are environmentally, and me trying to communicate that this isn't the nice thing about pretty flowers. This is about our survival as a natural community. So that's a huge block for me. My shift was and has been, and what has worked really well is to put that aside and put on the happy face and make my events fun, make them interactive, and make them empowering. So that has worked. The other block was I'm 61 years old. It became very clear, not only from a values point of view, that I was not going to be interested in pulling the same weeds out of the same 6 inches of bark mulch for the client, for the rich client every week, even though they were willing to pay me gazongas of money because they were desperate. They couldn't find other people. Physically, I couldn't do it. And just came home completely depleted. You know, when they weren't interested in looking at ideas for sustainable ground covers, you know, green mulch. So I don't do maintenance anymore and have shifted to the design and the workshop. So I've come through those aspects. The block now is figuring out how to balance what I do love to do with the income. And once again, so I also looked at becoming a not-for-profit, because obviously
Yeah.
what I'm offering is
Yeah.
needed most by the people who can't afford to pay. But
Yeah.
personally, I am not the kind of person. I've worked in the public realm where you've got committees and time and
Yeah, I
proposals
know.
and discussions and meetings, and all of the time that has to happen from that proposal of an idea, the thinking about it, the discussion. It's just not going to work for me personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
I go on inspiration. I've got to be able to implement what I need.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm getting there with those blocks, but I'm pretty clear about what they are and working through the creative options of what might work, what could work better.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I work with another client that does humanitarian photography. So he like travels to um, to different conflicts, wars, genocides happening around the country and documents them. And I know, like, such brutal work. And he's like debating between, like, he's like, I don't know how to get people to pay for this. Like, this is so
Right.
important. We need to know what's
Right.
happening.
Right.
And who's going to pay for this to happen? Like, it's really fucking expensive work, right?
yeah.
To fly and like, and so he was considering becoming a nonprofit. And he's like, the hoops and hurdles and like
Yeah.
the logistics, he's like, this is a nightmare. He's like, I'm just one human. How am I supposed
Yeah.
to like get all this? And like, yeah, I know. I think I think unfortunately nonprofits are, as like kind of noble of an idea it is, I think there's a lot of logistical challenges that come with them, and they do require a lot more humans to be involved than just you. And so that makes it challenging. Well, thank you both for sharing some of the things that are coming up for you, and I'm excited to keep digging into them. So this is a quick overview of where we'll go this next month. So today, we're gonna spend the rest of our time today just talking about money stories and our past narratives around money and how we really want to be relating to money moving forward. And then I'm going to leave you today with your spreadsheet that we'll be working with the rest of the month. Next week, we'll start talking about some like basic financial concepts. And we'll talk about 4 different reports that you'll hear people talk about that might be useful to you at certain times. It really depends on the type of business. But we'll go over a profit and loss sheet, a budget, a cash flow projection, and a balance sheet. And so just I want you to be able to, like, if someone asked you for one of these things, or if someone mentioned one of these things, you'd be like, yes, I know what you're talking about, and not like, and your eyes glaze over. Because that's what mine used to do. I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. So we'll talk about those a little bit, and you'll get some homework in terms of, I think we start off with putting all of your expenses in first to your spreadsheet. So we'll put all expenses in. Ideally, what I'd like you to do is, since I am giving you 3 weeks to do this, ideally, you're going to start like this next week, and you'll be able to do the full year's expenses and revenue. I think you'll get the most out of it, and you'll be able to make the most educated decisions moving forward if you have a full year's worth of data. And then in week 3, we'll talk about cash flow projections. So how do we make projections, and how do we think more futuristically versus being more reactive and in the moment in our business? How can we start to get a little more proactive in thinking about where we're going. This is also a time that I like to look at if there are any trends that have popped up in the spreadsheet as you've looked over the past year. Were there, for both of you are in seasonal work-ish. And so like, where are the peaks and valleys of the year for you? And we can also take a moment to look at like, does that work for you, right? Are you enjoying that seasonality, or is that stressful? And do we want to modify that in any way? And for me, I'm still figuring out, like, I think the winter months are just really dominated by business coaching. It's when people tend to be the most invested in like thinking strategically about their business and wanting to push ideas forward. But then in the summer, they're like, bye, I want to go play, especially in like Vermont, New England area where our summer is so precious and so short, although it seems to be getting longer. It's like they're not as interested. But carpentry is huge in the summer, right? People are like, I want to come build something. So like just looking at that, like what is that seasonal nature, and how can we kind of feel like we know what's coming a little bit more than we do currently. And then the last week, this is one of my favorite topics, is just figuring out how to pay ourselves. So whether that is paying yourself weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, I really want you to get to a place where you are like taking an owner draw, is what it's called, on a regular basis, versus this month, I think I could pay myself some money and I'm just gonna haphazardly throw some in and I don't know what I'm doing. Or on the flip side, just having all of your income coming into your personal checking account. We're gonna work on separating your personal checking to your business checking, because this is called commingling assets. And the biggest issue with this is if you get sued, they can come after all your personal assets, and that including your house and like your car, and that just really freaking sucks. So we really want to keep those two finances separated. And hopefully you should be able to find a credit union that does this very inexpensively, if not basically for free. So we'll talk a little bit about that in week 4 of like, how do we set up those systems? How does like the money move from one account to another? And how much money is moving? And how do we know when to increase that money, right? Like, how do we know when we're capable of giving ourselves a raise or things like that? Cool. Any questions on those? Does that feel clear-ish? Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right, so I'd love to spend a little time talking about these 2 questions. I think it's helpful to know like where we've been and what we're kind of coming to the table with. And so I'd love to hear some of the things you were explicitly and implicitly taught about money. Are there specific stories or sentences you remember when you were growing up hearing, and or, most of us are at an age now where there are stories we're telling our youth about money. And so thinking about what are those stories too. I've been exploring this a lot with my 4-year-old who has recently become aware of like money. I think it's still like very much a fictional thing to him, but I've been getting really curious about how I'm talking about money with him. So I'd love to hear.
Gonna wait you out, Kate.
Oh, you
I
are?
was like, Michelle, you've waited her out 3 times now. I'm watching. You're swinging
Very
too
patient.
far to the other end of the
Okay,
spectrum.
all right. Okay, I have had to work through decades of therapy. I come from a severely challenging background. My father was an artist, but couldn't support the family, and so he turned into a thief. And so money was always boom or bust.
Mhm.
And then it became an issue where he was buying people's stuff and was a pawners outlet, and I wouldn't take any of the things because it wasn't hot, but it was warm. So really bad family juju about money. That said, I don't come from that place. All of my siblings are making gazongas of money, raping and pillaging the world, and I kind of flow with money.
Yeah.
I don't have it, but I spend it, and my goal is to not come from a place of paucity that, oh, there's never enough, there's never enough.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
instead, I really am getting better and better and better about trusting the universe that somehow there's a reason that things are happening the way they are. So that feels great. And Kate, I can't tell you how happy I am that you own your house. I will own my home in 7 years.
nice.
And I've made some excellent decisions about, I turned this house into a duplex. So I have the income from the front
Nice.
unit that pays for the mortgage. And when I did that, I bought 27 solar panels. So I pay $18 a month for my electricity, and that covers 85% of my heat and
Nice.
electricity. So I've made, in contrast to my family, very healthy money decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's just an issue of figuring out how to be paid for what I love to do and what I have to offer. So I'm doing good with that, and then we go forward.
Yeah. Are there any like, I'm curious, I know for me, I have had experiences, I've had times in my business where I'm like, I have a lot of doubt about people either being willing to pay for my services or getting other folks to pay for my services. And then I go through bouts where I'm like, absolutely, I can find someone to pay for this. And like, I can have these, peaks of optimism. What's kind of going on in the background for you around getting paid for what you really want to be doing?
I went through that depression of realizing that the people I want to serve can't pay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the frustration of doing designs for people who can pay, but they don't do anything with it, or they want to hire somebody else to do it. So now I'm at the place where you are, Kate, understanding that there's money out there. There is an abundance of money out there, and it's my job to be strategic and creative and ferret it out and figure out how I can do this. So now I'm at the determined and creative and the ferreting stage.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see. I grew up, my dad was a single parent, and he never made any money. So like by the time I got to college, like my my income was like almost more than his was, kind of, he ran a documentary film company. But I grew up in this really wealthy town, in Princeton, New Jersey.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So where there was just a lot of upper middle class comfort and consumerism we didn't necessarily have access to. We had like a ton of cultural capital in my family. And we were never like uncomfortable or like deeply poor or anything like that. But just I think in my household, the way my father was, there just wasn't a huge value placed on money or career, kind of, it was, and he had a super interesting career as well. That just, I guess by the time we came around, my mother had died when I was young. So I think that was like a financial setback. But then, a couple of years ago, my godmother died and left me this chunk of money that enabled me to buy this house, which is like, I don't know, just like feels like such a huge, crazy privilege. Like my dad never owned a house in his entire life, you know what I mean? And he eventually, when I was a teenager, married a woman who like had some money, and they had a big fancy house and stuff like that. So I guess I don't really know. It just like it makes for like an odd relationship, right? To have this kind of security that I really didn't have growing up, and I feel so grateful for it. And it's interesting to like look around and see what
Mhm,
people have, who has it,
mhm,
not look at the why a little bit. So that's sort of like that's my perspective on
mhm,
money right now. And I'm just like really lucky that I don't need a ton of
mhm.
income. I don't have kids. I own my house and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Mm.
I I'll share a little bit too. I I think similar to many people had a kind of wonky relationship to money growing up. My When I was born, my dad was an Episcopalian minister, and so he was making $0, essentially just like living off the small stipend that the church paid. And my mom was a small business owner. She had a really wild French and Italian lingerie store. They made quite the couple. She was like a complete atheist and he was an Episcopalian minister. So it was funny. The newspaper wrote an article about them. They lived here in Burlington, and how scandalous it was, the two, their coupling and stuff. But so we grew up, and like, you know, money was a constant stress in the beginning. And so when I think by the time I was about 5, my dad started a financial investment business. He was like, he's a very smart human and just he's a problem solver. He likes to figure things out. And so he started a financial business and it did incredibly well. Like he made a lot of money. He made his clients a lot of money, and he did it in a way I'm grateful he did it in a way that was really ethical, and mostly helping seniors like manage their retirement, and he did it based on like he only made money if you made money, right? So there wasn't like he wasn't getting paid regardless, which was pretty cool. But that, and my mom's mom, I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. My grandmother, my matriarchal grandmother, was an antiques dealer, not an ethical human, not a kind human, very abusive, and very absent for my mom. But she had done very, very well and had left my mom some money, but had a very like she liked the finer things in life. She was very like, really liked fancy things and very nice things. And so my mom grew up with that vibe. And I think one of the most challenging things I've struggled with in terms of like my financial stories and my relationship to money is I was raised to believe and to act as if we had a lot of money, but we didn't. And my parents, my mom would spend like we had a lot of money, but we didn't. And that was constant friction in our household, and has like really influenced the way I've related to money as a young adult and then into my 30s. And it's something my partner and I've done a lot of therapy on, of like it's so ingrained in me that we are like upper middle class, but we're not. Like that is not our income. And so it's, I've done a lot of work on like, I think a lot of like class biases that are like deeply ingrained in my brain around like what kind of clothes we should have, what kind of car we should have, what kind of furniture we should have. And it's a point of friction still today with my mom of like, she thinks most things in my house are not nice enough. And it's like this constant budding. And I've grown up and I've learned, and I'm like, yeah, and you have no retirement. Like, right? Like you're 78 and you guys have barely enough retirement to live on. And like, what a bummer. Like, I'm so glad that we have a retirement that we are actively contributing to. And yes, that means we have a 20-year-old couch. And like, yes, that means my refrigerator is leaking all over the floor in our kitchen right now. And it's probably going to just keep doing that until I figure out how to fix it. But like, I've really had to push back on her language, and also just in my internal dialogue of like, we actually have enough. Like we're actually good. We don't need more necessarily, and we don't need nicer. But that's been a big one. My examples here down at the bottom in my household, it was the opposite. Like money does grow on trees and there's always more, even though it was like, no, there's not, there's not anymore. You've spent the money. And so that's been an interesting story for me to unpack. Yeah.
Can I just say kudos to both of you? I think this
Yeah.
is one of the major things that we as adults have to think about in order to try to do better in this next life. One of the things I'm
Mhm.
most proud about is that my daughter loves to shop at thrift stores with me. She's
Yeah.
17 and she's not ashamed to be wearing thrift store clothing, and she buys her fabric for her sewing projects from the
Oh, I
thrift
love
store. And her father has a lot of money and he's like this with it. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like this.
Yeah.
And I have to fight what you're talking about, Emily. It's just spending without it being there. But
Yeah.
kudos that we're thinking about. Whereas my mother didn't do anything and she's got nothing and it's a huge nightmare.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
kudos to us for thinking about it.
Totally. I know. And I've also had to like work on some anger too towards my parents of like, you're spending all the money that I could have inherited, right? Like you're spending all the money. Like me and my two sisters I'm like, we'll be lucky if there's a dime by the time they die. Like the way they spend is so, in my opinion, irresponsible to like, they're not making money anymore. They're 78 and 79, you know, like, and I think that's a place where I definitely have like some resentment that I'm still working on, is like, this is money that could put your grandchildren through college and like you're spending it. But at the same time, I'm like, it's their money. It's not mine, you know? And it's like working on that too, of like, kind of to your point, Michelle, of like releasing and just trusting that like, we're good. We can figure this out. And my kids will be fine, right? And they'll figure it out too. Yeah. It's a fascinating space. So on the flip side, so that's kind of like looking back, looking forward, what do you want your relationship to money to be like? What do you want to feel when you think about your ability to make money? Yeah, how do you want to feel about money? And we can even kind of contain it to this year. But it can also be just moving forward in general.
I am really looking forward to, I think I've made peace with the fact that this is the work that I'm doing now, and working with people to have this lovely diversity at home, figuring out how to help them understand it makes them feel better, is what I have to offer. And under our construct of what's going on in the world, this is what I need to do personally to go to my grave feeling that I did the best I could with what I had to offer. And if I only make a little bit of money and still have to have a part-time gig in order to allow me to do that, I'm going to be all right with that. That said, I still have these thoughts in my head that I'm going to figure this out. And this ebook that I'm working on, I'm wildly excited about, and it could inspire people to feel terrific about it. And maybe everybody buys this ebook and then that funds my ability to do the rest of the work. So I don't discount the opportunity that it could work out in a way that would provide the type of flexibility for the increasing curiosity of more creative projects. But I think I've made peace with the fact, and my daughter and I are at peace with the fact that I'm not bankrupting us, but I don't have that $1 million to retire on. And that was really important to me. I brought my daughter, I adopted her as an embryo, very conscious choice. And so there's only one. She doesn't have any siblings. And it was really important for me to make peace with how I'm acting as a responsible adult, right? So that we're coherent and we're all right with how I'm doing this.
Yeah.
I guess I don't have a lot of, I'm hoping that I can like somewhat support myself with the business, but recognize that that might not be possible. I think I'll have to have a part-time. I've sort of like put my work life on, I generally work seasonally anyway and like make a lot of
Mhm.
my money between March and November. Um, and then work much less in the winter.
Mhm.
So I guess I really see, I don't know that I'll like have employees at some point, but I like as a vision for a business, I really like would hope that it could create opportunities for like other people to have
Mm.
sustainable, joyful
Mm.
work as well, even if it's not like super lucrative, but at least you can like be able to support yourself in a limited way. Like I really
Mhm.
like I said, I really grew up, there wasn't a lot of value placed on money in my household, although there was like stress around it because there like often wasn't enough, as you said, but we always like went to thrift stores. There wasn't a lot of shame around it. Um, I think my dad just like it wasn't something that he placed a super amount of value on.
Mm.
Um, even as he like wanted to provide for us to be comfortable. So I'd like to have the like enough relationship with money, but like to always like be engaged with how to spread that around. I think that that comes from this like this my godmother dying and like giving me
Mhm.
this chunk of like totally out of the blue money that I had nothing to do with making. I don't like deserve
Mhm.
it. I don't
Yeah.
anyway, so like um that's sort of what it is I like move through it, and it's really like made it possible for me to do so many things, which I'm
Mhm.
super grateful for, and made my life like easy in a way that I like never would have expected, just like living super marginally all the time, which I'm like pretty comfortable with or whatnot. But
Mhm.
I'd really like to have that abundant view of money in terms of not just for myself, but
Yeah.
for other people too, because there are a ton of people that just like do not have access to money
Yeah.
in ways that are super destructive for them
Yeah.
and their lives.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Mm.
Um, I think I'm hopefully it's okay. I'm gonna share that I think I'm like ready to let go of a part-time job that I have, and I've been so scared to let it go. It has created such a safety net for me and my family. I took it on when I was pregnant with my second because I just felt like um, I couldn't consistently offer our family the income we needed. Like I couldn't be relied on to do that in my business. It like felt too hard and too scary. And I feel like and so I'm so grateful. I kind of to your point, Kate, of like in a way that part-time job and that money has felt like a gift.
Mm.
And one that like I didn't really do a ton to like deserve or earn, and it was just kind of handed to me, and it was so helpful. And also I don't think I need it anymore, and I'm noticing there's a voice in my head that's like, "Oh, you sure? You sure you can do without that? Like, what if shit goes bad? Or like, what if the business falls apart?" But it's like, I don't want to do the part-time work anymore. Um, and it's starting to really impact my ability to like do the work I really want to be doing because it is time in my week. Um, and and my business is doing well. Like it's really doing well. It's making enough money for us. And so I think one of the things I really want to work on, over the course of this month is like moving away from, I think for so long with raising two small children and like trying to buy a home I have been in this mindset that there is never enough money, like that I always have to be seeking more money. And I think that I'm ready to kind of slow the roll on that narrative and be like, actually, we've reached the point where we're okay. And like, sure, there's always room for more money, but like we're actually good. Like our bills are being paid. And I think it's okay to like let this go and like create a little bit more spaciousness for myself. So I'm really excited to like try and do that this month and like hopefully not pee my pants with fear while I do it. Yeah. So
That's so exciting,
I'm
Emily.
gonna
Oh
put
my
that out into the world.
gosh.
I know
Wow.
it's a, you know, like it was a, like I said, it was so helpful during the phase of life we were in and like raising a newborn and, you know, it just created a really lovely safety net for us. And like, I think now I'm like, now you're safe. Like, you know, like we're not unstable anymore and it's okay. But
Wow.
it's
That's
scary.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Thanks.
scary. It's like there's a lot of fear embedded in money and security,
There is
I
so
think,
much.
as well. So one has to be like brave.
Brave, yes.
Oh
And
my
that's something I'm
God.
constantly teaching my 4-year-old is like how to be
Holy
brave, you know?
Yeah.
cojones, man. I being an entrepreneur, maybe it's just in certain types of business, but the the braveness that has to happen. I'm grateful
Mm-hmm.
that my part-time job, that I'm honing these part-time job choices to at least be useful, not only for the immediate money, but also for networking possibilities. I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing aftercare
Mm-hmm.
with the local charter school, a former Waldorf
Mm,
school, and
cool.
walking into it's 3 hours a day, but it's $20 an hour. And so it's not a lot
Great.
of money. But these are parents that 3 or 4 of them are already clients.
Yeah,
And
sure.
so
This is something
that's
they're
a
interested in.
client
Yeah,
base. Yeah. So I'm grateful
that's
that
great.
the part-time I can at least shift that, but I'm
Right.
not to your station yet.
Yeah. Well, and I'm also like trying to remind myself like there were many years that I had no part-time job and I just ran my business and we were also
Mm,
fine. And so I'm like, we
mm,
can do that again. There was just
mm.
you were having a baby. That's why like things felt uncertain. Um, but yeah, so I think it's great to like be able to get to that place. Okay, so two things before we part. I know we're just about at time. So the first is I would like you to pick a day of the week and time of day for every week for the rest of the month that you're going to engage with the spreadsheet I give you. Or if Michelle, if you want to just do this in QuickBooks, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
You don't need to go back into the spreadsheet. I'll obviously give
Okay.
it to you regardless, but if it's easier for you to just stay where you are, that's fine. But I would like you to pick right now, before you leave, a day of the week and a time of day, like give yourself an hour window once a week for the rest of the month that you're going to work on these finances. And then let us know when that is.
I'm
So
already
go ahead.
thank you. I'm already trying to do that right now. Like yesterday, I
Great.
had like, all of my like checks and stuff out,
Great.
even trying to figure out like who hasn't paid me yet and
Yep.
why and whatnot. So that's great. I think my schedule is like a little up in the air right now, but I'll just
Okay.
pick tomorrow at 3 p.m. and then
Okay.
I need to change it in the Fridays at 3 p.m. if I need to change it in the future.
Perfect.
I guess I have to make that probably 2:30 so that I can
Great.
keep my Shabbat dinner.
Awesome. Lovely.
Aw. So I have to make a time commitment for 2 items, Emily.
Okay, cool.
One is the book.
Mhm.
And the other is for me, what I would qualify as my receipts, because as soon
Yep.
as I can have all the receipts in the place where they go, then I have that picture, or I have a better chance of
Yep.
that picture. So I was thinking it was going to be 2 hours each day. Right now I have had foot surgery, and so I don't have
Yeah.
the part-time job until the end of February. So
Okay.
till the end of February, it needs to be from 10:30 to 11:30 for the receipts.
Okay.
And I can commit to that for almost all days of the week. And then lunch, to be reasonable, and 1 to 1:30 for the book,
Okay.
each day. So
Cool.
book,
Let's do it.
draft.
And I would say, to our point about resistance, and this is true for both of you, just pay attention if you notice resistance coming up as you go through this. And instead of just like ditching the task, what I want you to do is just like play around with timing of day, play around with like there are certain things that like I'm like, there's no way in hell this is getting done if it's after lunch. Like I'm sleep. I just start to decline after 12 p.m. essentially.
Mm.
And so if you want anything good out of me, it's got to be before I go to the gym at noon.
Mhm.
And after that, I'm just like slowly moving towards bedtime.
Mm.
And so like, I know for me, if it's something that's going to really require my brain, it's got to be in the morning. I also know that Monday, tend to have a lot of anxiety. And so I'm also not wonderful on Monday. And on Friday, I'm absolutely done. Like, I'm toasted. I want to go play. I want to do something with my hands, whatever. And so just play around with that of like when your energy kind of ebbs and flows. And if you notice some resistance coming up to this, move it to a different time of day, move it to a different day of the week. We can also play with, for some people, the idea of like habit stacking is really useful. So like tacking this task on to another task can be good. So it's like, after emptying the dishwasher, I do this, or after running, I do this, or after, like, you can kind of piggyback off the energy of a different activity. That can work too. So, and then just let us know, like, if you're like, I'm really struggling to get this done, let us know, like, because then we can troubleshoot. Cool.
Emily, what's this little symbol down in the bottom left of your slides? The purple with the little white
Oh,
symbol?
I didn't realize you guys could see that. That's funny. So this is an app that lets me record my screen whenever I'm doing something.
Okay. All right. But
It's
what do you do your
yeah.
presentations in?
This is Canva. These slide decks are in Canva.
I need to try Canva. I've exhausted.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
This is right here. Yeah. This
Yeah,
is all in
okay.
Canva.
Great.
It's easy, and I'm not one for like really fancy things. Okay, so I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen, and I'm just gonna grab that spreadsheet for you real quick, and then we can wrap up.
You gonna put that in the chat?
Yeah, I'm gonna grab it, and then I'm just gonna show it to you guys real quick too.
And I'll just share something with you, Michelle, that has been coming up for me while I listen about your business is that just that bees are part of like well, I guess like as you install these native landscapes, you're also providing habitat for these native bee populations, which are declining. And there are a lot of people who are really interested in that. Like people have a lot of love for honeybees right now. And so I'm not talking necessarily about honeybees, but it's just sort of an interesting part of what you're doing as
It's
well.
a
And the bees
huge,
are the bees are just like a super easy way to see that in terms of like habitat restoration and habitat health.
absolutely, Kate. Bees are absolutely integral, and they're a huge part of the programs that I offer in terms of stewardship, cutting all stems in the garden 12 to 18 inches for that 2-year native bee cycle of nesting, and waiting until at least a week of 50-degree soil temperatures before you do anything. And if you really feel like you have to take down the stalks, binding them and putting them in the corner so that whoever's left in there. Yeah, the insects are huge, integral issue to what I do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I put a link in the chat and that's to this folder, and this folder has a whole bunch of stuff in it. And so don't worry about, and we'll go over stuff as we go through the weeks, but all I really want you to care about is this one right here, the business. It's called business expense something. I can't remember. We'll click on it. Business expense budget with pie charts.
Does that mean you're sharing a folder with us when
I put it in the chat. Can you open it?
Yeah, so when I opened it, it brought me to, oh yeah, shared with me the entire folder. Okay.
Cool.
So we can copy this stuff and then
Yep,
use it on our own.
absolutely. And so
Got it.
then what you'll do is you'll want to open this one, the business expense budget with pie charts.
Got it.
And we're going to spend most of our time the next 3 sessions here. And so, well, the next 2 sessions we will spend in this sheet. And then we'll go to another sheet in order to figure out how much to pay yourself. But what you'll see down at the bottom here is, so right now we're in the expense budget. You've got expense actual, expense variances. Now my screen is in the way. And then expense analysis. This is where it's going to create pie charts for you, which is pretty cool. Once you have the information in here. And so.
Over here.
I wonder if I can export from QuickBooks into, is this Google
You can-
Charts?
This is Google Sheets. Yep.
Google Sheets. I wonder if I could.
Wait, where is? I feel like maybe I'm in the wrong spreadsheet. Hold on. Let me just.
I have
Oh, okay. No, it's up in the top here.
like
Okay.
a smart sheet thing at the top of it.
Yeah, that's who owns this. So you just have to
Okay.
make a copy and then you can delete this bar if you want. I just leave it there. It's kind of, these are like pre-calculated spreadsheets that you can just look up online. And so Smartsheet is the company that like put this spreadsheet together. And my partner, the functions were broken and my partner is an Excel wizard and he fixed them. So hopefully they are still fixed. But if we run into an issue, he'll have to make an appearance again.
Woohoo! Good for you.
He's great. So what you'll see is like this first part. I feel like this is just looking a little funny. Give me just one quick second here. Gotta move our little faces. Oh my gosh, come on, Zoom. You're killing me. Oh, maybe I'm looking at the wrong one. You guys bear with me here for a second. Oh, sorry. We were in the wrong spreadsheet. I was like, this does not look like what it looked like in September. Okay, ignore this one. So we're going to use this one, the annual business budget.
Okay.
Sorry. My apologies.
Oh, okay. That looks better.
I was like, there should be separate pages for income versus expenses. I was like, why is this not working? So this first page is going to be all your income. And we'll talk more about this next week. But I just want you to have this in the meantime, in case you want to play with it between now and next week. You can change all of these things. So essentially, like what I would do if this was me, I would have this be like one-on-one coaching clients. I'd have this be like consulting projects. I'd have this be part-time job. Right? I would actually list out all the ways I'm getting paid. I'd have this be like my online course, and this would be I might shift if I wanted to separate. So like I do a lot of like a lot of people get grants to work with me one-on-one, which I think both of you are familiar with. If I wanted to be able to see what are the percentage of people paying out of pocket versus the people that are paying with grants, I might have those as separate line items. So essentially what you're doing is just putting Putting all of your incomes in here and separating them out in a way that makes sense. There are sections of the spreadsheet that might just be completely irrelevant to you. And sorry, I can make this bigger. I see you, Kate, being like, I can't see
So
this.
that's me. I'm wondering, okay, annual, you're in income. Okay.
Yep. And so
I was looking at the expenses and I was like, wait a second. I don't see any categories here that are
in the
applicable.
expenses.
Yeah, not
Yeah,
any.
So,
They're
and so
very few.
you can change any of these. What I would not do is delete lines out because it's going to mess with the functions in the spreadsheet.
Okay.
So anything that's not relevant, just ignore it and move on.
And add
But you
another column.
can absolutely change like these titles, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
could we change website, mobile app to digital things? There's so many
Totally. You
monthly
could, this
digital
could be like,
fees for,
this could be digital fees,
yeah.
Okay,
right?
so
Like
I
that's,
can change this all too, because like my operational, like there's like operational and capital expenses sort of that I've
Yep.
had.
sure. Yep. This is just like an example to try to get some ideas going. Make it yours. So maybe what would be a good homework assignment between now and next week would be to just get this set up to be what it would be for you, right? Like just get the categories set up
Oh
in the
dear.
income and the expenses. Don't worry about putting any of the numbers in. If you're feeling extra gung-ho and you're having a ton of fun, like sure, go ahead and start. What I want this to do is be for 2023. I really want you to track all of 2023 in here or somewhere. Michelle, if you want to do this in QuickBooks, that's totally fine.
Well,
And so,
yeah.
yeah. And so then what will happen is we'll have, and let's just make sure these, yeah, hopefully these, I'll have my partner just double check and make sure the functions are still working. But they should be good. And so then what we'll see is some graphs of like expenses versus income, and we'll be able to see like what it looked like over the course of the year
So just
and
two
month by
questions.
month.
2023, this is 2023?
2023.
Okay, and then you're talking about personal income as well as business income. We're combining, so even
If
though we've
you
got
want,
different bank
it's-
accounts,
It's
we're.
up to you. Whatever is
Yeah.
going to be useful to you. For me,
Huh.
the part-time work that I do for the bank, for Opportunities Credit Union, that gets paid into my business checking account. And I
Yeah.
consider it as like a business revenue stream because
Yeah.
I'm showing up here in the same exact way I would show up for
Yeah.
my one-on-one clients. So to me, I include it, it all comes in, and then I pay myself to my personal check, our
Okay.
joint personal checking from there. So for me, that makes sense. If that's not the way your finances are running, totally fine to just like leave your part-time job out of this equation. It's really up to you. However, what you think is going to be useful for you to look at.
So if I put my personal income in there though, will we be able to parse out the business aspect when trying to determine how much I pay myself from the business?
So for instance, like I'll just use like I'm just gonna stop